Thank you for that welcome. Welcome, everybody. Look at this. Sunny south of France. What a way to spend a Monday morning, hey? Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. So, by way of quick introductions, I think we should probably just do a quick roundup of the panel we've got, because I think it's very unusual and exciting to have three very senior marketers that sit across global brands, global businesses in their market. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Arjoon from Bell, looking after some of those iconic refrigerator brands that we all have. Baby Bell, Burskin, all global cheese brands that everyone has used and loves and fed their children. Molson, Coors, Sofia, some iconic brands, some iconic creative executions too. I think it's I'm not from the States, but it's time. I think it's time for it's time.
It's Miller time.
Yep. And Bucherer, which has recently gone through a kind of rebrand, a merger, and is now owned by Rolex, but some of the most iconic high-end jewelry and watch retailers in the market. So welcome, everybody. I think where I want to start, if we can, and I might start with you first, Sofia, and then we'll kind of throw out to the panels. I think all three of you work in an incredibly competitive, yet very different sector. So what I would like to start with, and to kind of give the audience a flavor, is how do you define and protect your brands across the entire consumer touch points you have, from digital all the way through to retail and partnerships?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think for us too, we have a really big portfolio in the US and Canada and obviously globally too. And our brands play distinct roles. Like we have a lot of different brands. So, we have in Canada, we have Molson. In the US, we have brands like Miller and Coors. And, we have Peroni and non-alcoholic beverages like Zoa. So there's so many different brands, and each of them has a really distinct and unique point of view and what we call brand essence. And so what we try to do is really make sure that everything we do for each brand is grounded in that brand essence. And actually, I just saw Nir over there. Hi, Nir. Nir is the founder of one of the agencies we work with, which is Brand Opus. And they actually worked with us on creating for Molson an entire visual identity and like thinking about all of the distinct ways, using our distinctive assets, how Molson is going to come to life at every single touch point. So it's super important that our teams have this as a starting point so that we protect the brands. Then we can talk about it a little bit after, but what we've done is we've created a framework at Molson Coors. We call it MUSCLE. And what that does is it's like an acronym. So magnetic, unexpected, simple, you get it. And essence is the last one. And everything we do is grounded in making sure that we bring to life really creatively effective work under MUSCLE with the essence of the brand showing up every time. So it's a framework we created about 1.5 years ago, and it's actually made a huge difference in terms of that consistency that we are looking for.
So before I throw to the other guys, when you've got so many brands, how do you prioritize? How do you kind of decide who's getting what and when so that you're not cannibalizing each other?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, like we do have so many brands, and they play different roles in consumers' lives. And so the reality is, like, you have to be smart in terms of thinking about the business and like what's going to drive your core volume. So brands like Miller Lite or Coors Light or Banquet or Molson in Canada, but then you also have more emerging growth brands. And so I think, like, from a prioritization perspective, it's really laying it out like with the teams early on, like where are we going to place our big bets? And then also making room for things that are like more up and coming. A great example is we actually just, we're getting more and more into non-alc, which makes sense because we all see the consumer trends. And, we just acquired a brand called Naked Life, which is the #1 zero proof cocktail in Australia. And it's an awesome brand. And that one we're going smaller with. We're selling it first in Amazon. We're going into Target. And so it's not going to have the same spend probably initially as a Miller Lite or a Coors Light,
Sure.
But it's about being smart with the brands that you have.
Right, cool, thank you. So changing pace from beverages that everyone has living in their fridge and goes out and buys, let's talk about luxury kind of watches, jewelry. How do you manage that from defining your brand from everywhere from socials all the way through to your in-store experience, which must be a huge part of your overall brand experience?
Absolutely. I think we had a fabulous opportunity with the acquisition. So Bucherer, from originally based in Switzerland, Lucerne, a heritage brand and retailer, acquired to know in 2018. And I came in 2019, and we had this amazing opportunity to do a full rebrand. So with that, we went back and really tried to understand what is the equity, what is the actual core of Tourneau, and what is the core of Bucherer. And we went out and we literally asked clients, both in Switzerland but also in the United States, how do you define Tourneau and how do you define Bucherer? What do you know in terms of attributes for Bucherer? And with that, we really were able in a months-long exercise to go through the core and build the core values and also build the vision for Bucherer in the United States. Because it's a global brand, but it's definitely perceived differently and the experience shouldn't be different. But there are certain values that stand out more in the United States versus in Switzerland, for example. So a big part of was bringing that Swissness into the United States, and it turns, to your point, to the experience. How can we create a luxury hospitality experience that's rooted in Swiss values? And that's what we are trying to bring to the United States.
I love that. We should definitely pen that term, Swissness. I think we could all use a little bit more Swissness. So I'm going to come back to something you just said in a second, but Arjoon, how do you manage touch points as a supermarket brand across everything you have to make sure there's some consistency of experience for people that have learned to love and have loved your brand for so long?
Hi. The first thing to say is, again, to know what your portfolio stands for. And as a group, we stand for portions of goodness. So as you think to portions of goodness, each of our distinct brands have distinct roles to play within the value chain, within the consumer tier. And it all stems from the fact that we have clear priority markets and clear priority brands. And internally, we call it global strength and local magic. I'm going to lean into your point, Sofia, of, the importance of what we call DMCs, distinct memory codes. So for the Laughing Cow, the iconic red Laughing Cow as a mascot is one that we play up front and center. The value of it's better to laugh and the value of positivity in everything we do, in our experiences, in our advertising, in how we show up on social, is a red thread that we define. And similarly, again, for Baby Bell, if it stands for the playful kind of good, everything we do, all the way through the funnel, needs to live and breathe that. So I think internally, frameworks that we define called the brand wheel allow us to have a clear definition of what is fixed and then what is flex for local market, because we need to lean into cultural nuances.
I love that. What's fixed and what's flex?
Yeah.
Really, it's so important. When you talk about kind of a global brand, but then having local magic, I think that whether you're a brand or whether you're a B2B business, I think that's really important that you have that localized kind of essence within your company to make sure that you're applying it to that particular brand.
And I think the other thing just to stress on, Cam, is having very clear roles and responsibilities between global and local teams. So essentially, at a global level, you deliver scalability, and then you empower your local teams to run away once they are clear on the frameworks and their modus of operation.
Amazing. So something that you said just then, Carina, that I think is really interesting, and it's I think the three of you have a very different relationship with e-commerce, and it's not atypical really when you look at kind of the growth of e-commerce. So what we're at, I think roughly, I could get this wrong, I probably should know this stat, but we're at just over $4 trillion kind of online sales this year, on a path to 6 by 2028. What role does e-commerce play for you? And how does that complement the in-store experience you were talking about and the Swissness that you have with your brand? And then I think we might go to everyone around what e-commerce means to you and how does that relationship work and what's your ambitions with it?
I look at it from two perspectives. One is obviously it helps me get data behind my work. So it's really, really important in terms of all the incoming data, performance marketing, to be accountable and to build the brand further with those insights. Then the other part, especially for luxury brand, is to really enhance and continue your experience, right? We want this to be, this is the window, this is usually the first touch point. Like 80% of our clients, before they come to any store, look at our e-commerce. So it's really crucial that there is the experience, the storytelling all online, which we are still building out. Like that's an ongoing build out process. It just never ever stops. And then to obviously have a seamless omni-channel experience as well. So we can we've had this, I think, even 15 years ago, we were already omni-channel. So that's something we've really implemented very well, and we are still continuing to implement the experience as we speak.
With your consumer e-commerce experience, do you have a huge amount of consumers kind of researching and then coming in store, or are there plenty of people buying $100,000 watches online?
It's actually, you'll be surprised how many people buy 100,000 watches online. It's really interesting, but it's true, yeah.
I guess convenience is everyone's kind of gift, isn't it? So
yeah, we're also not represented everywhere in the United States. So, for example, we don't have a store right now in Texas, so we have a lot of clients there that buy online with us.
Interesting. E-commerce. We both have a really interesting perspective of it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's different because in the U.S., so many people know this, but we have a 3-tier system. So we can't sell beer directly to a retailer. We go through distributors. And going back to the point actually you were making around localization and making sure you have clear guardrails, because all of our marketing then also touches locally distributors. So that's kind of another thought. But the majority of our sales still are more brick and mortar. We're pushing more into e-commerce, but there's just a lot of regulations around it. What we are doing, though, as we're getting into non-alc, brands, we have a partnership with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, on Zoa, which is an energy drink, and then the Naked Life product I told you about. Those are obviously, we're going to go hard. They're top sellers on Amazon, which is really important to us. At the same time, we do look at how can we bring our creative ideas to life in smart ways in e-commerce. So, for instance, with Coors Light, we have a music program which is called Chill on Shuffle. And so with Chill on Shuffle, it's how do we think about bringing that campaign to consumers in multiple ways? So we actually partnered with Instacart, and we essentially had an Easter egg in there where people could put in Chill on Shuffle, and they suddenly had opportunities to win prizes and experiences. So we're also looking at how do we kind of partner creatively with e-commerce partners, knowing the limitations we have.
So that's interesting. So I think that's kind of your owned e-commerce kind of platforms, and how do you bring that to life? Yeah. How do you balance you must have hundreds of retailers that are retailing your product online.
Yes, we do. And I mean, look, we have an e-commerce team, and we work directly with the retailers. And then, obviously, we do things again, in alcohol, you can only do so much in terms of supporting specific retailers. But yes, we, just like any company, we have teams that focus on that too.
Right. Okay. Arjoon.
Well, first thing to say is, we see e-commerce as an end-to-end experience, and certainly not something that's lower funnel. For us, e-commerce at Bell has been one of our fastest growing categories. It's been growing double-digit for the last 5 years. So we deem it as a real big bet. And what I mean by not necessarily going lower funnel is it's not something that necessarily just serves shoppability or conversion. We know the online consumer is all about using e-commerce, retailer sites, the likes of Amazon, for discovery, for consideration. So knowing that behavior is a very significant piece of information that we use to adapt our marketing mix. And that's why, for example, digital commerce is linked up as part of the Chief Marketing Digital Office, I want to say remit, to make sure that we serve end-to-end. And by end-to-end, we have an internal philosophy we call more hearts and more places. It starts right away with insight saying, unlocking the keys to knowing what and how to win consumer hearts, to going all the way to knowing how to win consumer hearts online as the last mile. And then, and within, and in the middle, you're going to have your integrated marketing communication strategy, which defines the touch points. And therefore, it's something that we work hand in hand as part of an integrated digital experience and digital commerce.
Okay, I think that's really interesting, because I think the more fragmentation there is in the marketing team, the easier it is to get it wrong. So having everyone integrated, including e-commerce, which sometimes I think people are more and more drawing that in, but in a lot of businesses it still hasn't been drawn in. So you've got e-commerce sitting with sales and you've got marketing sitting elsewhere, and it can cause conflict quite quickly. So with so much, there's a lot on marketing and CMOs. You're in charge of brand love, the love that people have for your brand, consumers, existing and new, building communities. But more and more, there is a very clear line between brand love and business outcomes. So, you know, marketing is not only in control of the brand love, it's in control of how well the brand's doing in all environments and across the entire kind of consumer funnel. So with that, with a growing need for outcomes and kind of guaranteed outcomes, how are you experimenting and finding room for creativity in your team?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick that one off. That's so important, especially, frankly, when we're in con and we're, you know, doing really fun things, and then you have to go back to the team and say, hey, to the CFO, there's a real reason we're doing all of this. And so, look, like the work that we do at Molson Coors, like we're really proud because it's really creative, but we don't like creativity for the sake of it. We like it when it sells our beverages. Yep. So we always talk about that. And actually, you know, a couple of years ago, we did start to define a little bit more what our ambition was. And for us, it's all about creative effectiveness. So case for case, we want to be the most creatively effective beverage marketer in the world. And, you know, and when I took Gavin, our CEO, through it, it's like it is measured by revenue, by share, by profit. So like we are in service to build brands that people want to hang out with, but it always has to come back to selling our products. And so once you can actually demonstrate that creativity actually has that ROI, and we have a lot of measures for it, it's really helpful. At the same time, too, like you can't get lost so much in the science that you're losing sight of the creativity. And to be honest, like when we were looking across our teams, like we were doing a lot of creative work, but at the same time, we also had so much science that teams were almost like being paralyzed by it. So that's again why we created this framework, the muscle framework, because it helped build people's understanding and almost codify what is it that we're looking for in creativity. You know, it's not just about passing a test in neuro, it's actually about building your creative gut. So it's been a journey, but it's been fantastic.
I think that's amazing because it's that intersection of art and science.
100%.
That makes marketing really special.
Yeah, and it's also about using it at the right time. So for instance, like when we are briefing our agency partners or giving feedback, we always look at it within the framework of muscle. And by the way, muscle, it's like, is it magnetic? Does it make you feel something? Yep. Is it unexpected? I'm not going to go through the entire thing with you, but what's nice too, it's not like we've given up on testing. We're just doing it at the right time. Yep. So instead of our teams briefing agency partners and saying, hey, we want you to put the beer in the first 5 seconds because we know that in neuro it tests better that way, which by the way, that was happening before. We're actually being more strategic, and then we test after and we optimize. Yep. But we don't build the creative to pass a test. And that's the difference, I think.
Okay, that's really interesting. How about you when it comes to kind of that kind of hybrid of art and science and finding room to be really creative and taking risks and experiment?
I think we take what we know from the digital space to the creative space. I call it beta testing, obviously. So we try to do as much as we possibly can on the digital side, which is not the norm for like luxury because we're a little bit like, we're not necessarily the most innovative when it comes to the digital space. But we also do that for any creative concepts. So we have the luxury that we can test it in smaller scales on the store level, for example, or store by store level. So I can try and test a partnership or try and test like an event concept or a programming concept. And then we'll see how the results are and how it performs. But to what Sofia just said, the most important point for me is like, how does it make you feel? Mm-hmm. So I'm not necessarily looking for the immediate like return of investment. I'm looking for the client feedback and the feedback from the client that then ultimately pays into the brand. Right.
Thank you. So interesting, slight change of topic, but it is kind of related. What excites you most, Arjoon, about that intersection between kind of brand and performance when it comes to marketing?
I mean, you know, today I think there's a wee bit of an obsession on the funnel, and the fact is, with it no longer being linear, with it being working through an ecosystem, it's about how do we simplify it. And one of the ways we try and define it is almost as though we think of it as part of a human body. There's the head, there's the heart, and there's the hand. And that's typically, and if I were to break that down in terms of the head is about the idea, and we call that remarkability. Is your idea strong, simple, and fluid? Can it work through all of the touch points? Then you've got magic, or magical, if you will, which is, does it make my heart flutter?
Yep.
Does it, as marketers, creativity is our superpower. Is this something that we can therefore supercharge and excite and engage consumers, what you would call classical consumer engagement? And then finally, the third piece is modern. As modern marketers, we have a responsibility, almost in an art and science or math and magic kind of way. And this is about the and. I think as marketers, there is no further compromise. I think it is about online and offline. It's about rave and revenue. It's about purpose and performance. So for us, I think the need to embrace that and therefore also serve with some specific guidelines. We try and give our teams guidelines to ensure that we are always, first and foremost, at the service of the consumer, at the service of the brand, and most importantly, at the service of growth. Penetration metrics being by far the most important growth metric that we see.
So I think that's really interesting, and I think there's a lot of people that probably aren't getting that heart right. I think there's a lot of people that are constantly using their head and using the data and not necessarily getting the heart right. But as executives, you have to make snap decisions with incomplete information sometimes. So what is it that makes you think, okay, I feel good about this? What data do you use? What is your process for deciding whether or not, yes, we're going to go ahead with this if we don't have a real guarantee that it's going to work? Like if you're experimenting.
I mean, at the end of the day, as an FMCG company, we have a lot of historic data, a lot of secondary research data. And I'd say so long as a core set of people feel that is a consumer-centric idea, I think everything we try and do at Bell is about making the consumer smile. And that's the first question we ask ourselves. Is the idea something that's going to flow across and make the consumer smile? And more often than not, when we back our gut, naturally backed up with a reliable amount of data, we tend to lean in and go for it.
So data and gut still, which is, I think, really
very,
important.
Very similar when you were just talking about the magnetic, that is, how does it make you feel? I think for us, again, we do a lot of things in culture, and I think it comes down to risk versus reward and also how much of an investment it is. I can give you two examples. So Super Bowl is obviously a huge thing for us. We've been in the Super Bowl a number of years now, and we've learned a lot. And so we knew this year we wanted a big through-the-line campaign. We had this idea with Mischief, Case of the Mondays. And it, like, for anyone that knows, it's like a reference, like on a Monday, you have a case of the Mondays. And we literally, like, we launched a Coors Light Mondays Light pack. And so it was an entire integrated campaign. But even that, when we bought the idea with Mischief, we went ahead and we did it, but we still felt there was something missing because we wanted to announce the Case of the Mondays idea in a really unexpected way, going back to muscle. We didn't have that yet. But then after we, kept on working, one of the ideas was, what if we had our own Case of the Mondays? And so as Molson Coors. So we took out billboards and, advertisements and, Times Square, New York Times, and we had an advertising around refreshment, which is all around Coors Light's the most refreshing beer in the world. And we misspelled refreshment. And the internet went wild. And people were like, you idiots, what are you doing? I was getting texts. Like, it was crazy. And a lot of people were like, was it real? Was it like, did they do it on purpose? It doesn't matter. We came back. Obviously, we had planned it. We came back and we said, hey, we had a Case of the Mondays. We're being chill about it. And to make it up, we're launching a literal Case of the Mondays pack.
Brilliant.
If we hadn't done that unexpected twist, I don't think anyone would have really cared about the Case of the Mondays pack. But that's a good example where we did buy the idea, but we had enough trust with Mischief that we were going to get there. So I think that was a good one. I think another good example of just moving fast and just like moving with your gut. We had, I don't know if you saw, there was a case that won a bunch of Lions last year. It was when Ohtani, the baseball player, he hit a foul ball into a Coors Light sign, made a little indentation. And that day that it happened, Aaron Starkman, who's our chief creative officer for Rethink, that we work really closely with, sent me a text saying, this happened, we got to do something. And we said, done, let's do it. And like on that one, all we needed to do, and again, we work like this with Rethink, is we put out a post online with a little visual of the indented case. And they have this idea, which is, we agree with it, which is go, then grow. So when that happened in social, people went wild. They're like, this is so funny. So then we worked with our supply chain team and our legal team to say, what if we actually made these cans? So you kind of like, the idea is you hold hands, you don't miss a single day, and then you get your entire cross-functional team behind it.
I think that's an amazing example of how you bring teams together.
Totally.
And I think to pull off amazing executions like that really quickly, it takes a really high-performing team.
It does. And I think we're fortunate that we've been doing these types of things at Molson Coors for years now, but our entire organization understands our marketing philosophy. And so we've built, again, we have the acronym muscle, but we've also built that muscle with our teams.
Yep.
And I think what's really nice is that our legal teams, our finance teams, like they're people too. Like they're out in the world, one of the best things was when our CFO came to me and she goes, and she's like a pretty hard judge. She's like, my son actually liked that work that you did with Otani, which is a huge compliment because like our teams want to feel proud about it too. So I think going back to building high performing teams, like they're part of it with you. The creative work, the pride is their pride too.
Yep.
And then you have to set that vision and then you have to bring people together.
So on that note, Arjun, I'm going to ask you this because as a CMO, you're not just building iconic brands, you're building a high-performing team that can deliver for those brands. What's most important for you and your team? Like, what's the characteristic of a high-performing team for you?
I think it's frameworks, most importantly, especially when you're global teams working with local. I mean, there is no global without local. And so everything we do sits within a framework, and we've recently completely reaffirmed our marketing organization principles to enable us to move faster, to enable us to move at the speed of culture, and enable us to really build brand first. And we call this the RISE framework, and it stands for renew, innovate, scale, and empower. But the renew is important because no matter what project you do, it's important we come together as a task force, that we align, we renew our vows to each other in terms of how we're going to be doing this. And then you've got everyone in line of one, serving innovation at scale with teams empowered to move forward, fail fast, learn fast, and loop right back.
I think that's really, we've got one chance for one last question. I'm going to come to you, Carina, because we talked about internal teams and how important it is that they can fail fast, move on, and the culture of getting things done quickly. We're in the sunny south of France. There are thousands of people that have flown here to try and connect with CMOs. And there are teams out there that are going to be trying to sell things to you all day, every day for the next week. And some of that you need to buy. But in 2025, what does good look like from a partner? Whether it's an agency partner, MarTech, retail partner, any kind of partner in your sphere of marketing, what does good look like in 2025? What are they doing that others aren't, that is going to make you engage with them?
I think especially like for our business, I really need the partner to understand our business, like understand my problems, understand what keeps me up at night, basically, and understand like the luxury business for me personally, but also like how our clients tick and what is crucial for us. Because we operate differently, right? So the worst thing you can do as a partner, like give me like a spiel by spiel from something that you've done with another big brand, because it might not apply to me at all.
So what are you going to do for me, not what have you done for someone else? And understanding. Sophia?
Very similar. For us, like it comes down to, with our partners, like we're in it together with them, and we want to feel like they feel that too. And again, it goes back to, we want to do creatively effective work, but it's not for awards. The awards are a nice, aftermath, but it's really about driving the business. And so they believe it. And our partners have been awesome, because when times have been tough or challenging, they're right there with us. And that, that goes a long way.
Great. Arjun, what's a partner look like for you?
Very simple. I mean, we expect our partners to be almost an indispensable extension of our marketing teams, at the service of our brands, at the service of our consumers, and at the service of growth.
Arjun, Sophia, Carina, thank you for sitting up here and talking to me for half an hour this morning in a beautiful spot. Enjoy your trip.
Great job.
Thank you, everyone.